fucking did it. What a crazy fucking game. Alright, shit. Okay, first things first. The bottom center of the screen says that we've beaten 94 games this year. And, 416 since we started doing this. Those numbers are now incorrect. We've now beaten 95 games this year. And 417 since we started doing this in 2020. Alright, wow, what a crazy game. So I'm a big fan of games like Inside and Limbo and Little Nightmares and those like Limbo adjacent games that this is kind of that this creator, that one of the creators of those games is known for. But I will say, and so I was expecting that kind of experience. This isn't exactly like that. It's got some similarities for sure. But this is, at the end of the day, this is just a puzzle game. Little Nightmares and Limbo, there's like real fail states. There's, you can die. You can't really die in this game. So it's very, very heavy on the puzzle. I do remember a couple of times in Limbo and Inside there being puzzles that really racked my brain, but this took that even a step farther. But even within that context, it manages to have some pretty decent boss fights, which, even though you can die in in Limbo and Inside, there aren't really boss fights per se. I guess they have like the spider and stuff, but this game had like more like traditional looking boss fights where you're in the boss arena. There's a big entity, and it's not just about running away from it or pushing a box in front of it or something. Like, you have to beat the boss in a way that's kind of like some of the later, like, I remember it kind of reminded me of like Super Mario Odyssey, where they're basically like the Bowser fights and stuff. They're basically puzzle fights. It was kind of like that. But they were really well thought out, very clever, very... the people that made this game have some big, juicy brains. It's not something I would have been able to come up with. Even in concept, these boss fights. Oh, look, they're all there now. We've defeated them. We've got all their trophies. So, good things. I mean, the puzzles were really, really crazy. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Portal. There's there's parts of your brain that you just don't normally use in day-to-day life that you kind of have to unlock in order to make this game make sense. And that's kind of how it felt playing Portal. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to, okay, there's an infinite world inside this little orb. Just having to think that way is difficult. It's like stretching a muscle that doesn't get a lot of exercise. And so, but it was fun. And I wouldn't say it was too hard. I was able to get through the game without a walkthrough. And if I can do it, then I think most people can. Because I'm not that good at puzzle games. So, but it took every ounce of my intellect to get through especially the later ones. They were tricky, really crazy level of difficulty. I'm a little surprised I was even able to do it. I think I got lucky a couple of times. I did. As far as critiques, I mean, this game isn't going to rank as high as, Border Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because that game is exactly my kind of game, and this game, while quite fun, isn't like within my wheelhouse. But for what this game is, it's about as good as it gets. For like just a hardcore, straightforward, like, puzzle game. This is a puzzle game. Even something like Little Nightmares, which is puzzle heavy, it's not as hardcore a puzzle game. Like, it's got other elements that make that where its value shines through. Like, it's scary, for instance. It's got some jump scares and it's got some really haunting stuff. Like, that's what makes it special. This doesn't have anything like that. That was true with Inside and Limbo as well. So for something that's kind of within that genre, but not exactly, that doesn't have anything scary at all, you better make sure your puzzles are on point. And these puzzles were on point. I'm kind of glad they didn't try and make it like something scary or something, because it would have taken focus off of just how fucking intellectually challenging this game is. You know, that's like, the way they package it, it's like, we're not going to fuck with any of that, those bells and whistles. We are going to give you this is going to be presented as a puzzle game right out the gate. It is going to break your brain, and that is what it is doing. It's not trying to do anything else. Now, that being said, the way that the art style and art direction is absolutely gorgeous. So, you know, it's not like there's no other value outside of the puzzles. It's got a very distinctive look to it that really works for what you're trying to do. It's a nice little backdrop for the puzzle solving. It's very cool, especially during the boss fights, you know. So I did a very interesting job of managing scale, where you get used to walking around the screen as your little bug or whatever you are, and you think that's about normal size, and then you walk up to something that's just like 50,000 times bigger than you, and it starts to move. And then you realize you have to fight that thing, and it's got some interesting, like, eye-opening moments, like holy shit moments, where something starts to happen and it's like, oh, that changes everything. You know, there were half a dozen of those. So I really don't have any complaints. It is a very well-made game. It does exactly what it sets out to do, cleanly, concisely, and in a really satisfying way. It's not a game that's trying to be everything. You know, it's just trying to be this one thing, but it just does it pretty much perfectly. So again, like, because it's not exactly my kind of genre, it's not going to rank as high as some other games that aren't objectively as good. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if I were ranking games by objective value, this game would be way, 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 way higher. Because it has that feel like it's kind of a perfect game. You know, it's the perfect length. It looks perfect. It plays perfect. There wasn't a bug to be seen. It's very well crafted. The art style is very deliberate and nails exactly what it's trying to do. Like, it's only trying to do like 4 or 5 things, but it nails all of them. You know, it's perfect for what it is. It reminds me a little bit of Superliminal. Made me feel that way. A very similar kind of game, actually. Game that's like, okay, here's the parameters of what you're doing. Now let's try and stretch your brain out as much as we can within that game. That's what it's probably more like than any other game. Is Superliminal, because it is one of those puzzle games that is just going to break you mentally, unless you're just really good at that, I guess, that kind of thing, I guess. And it's a nice little 5-hour package or 4-hour package, or however long. Superliminal's, I guess, slightly longer, but it takes a few hours to get through if you know what you're doing, or maybe less because I didn't. But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. But Superliminal is one of those games that when I think of like a perfect game, Superliminal is one of the games that I think of as kind of perfect. It only exists in this little tiny corner of the gaming world, but in that corner, it owns it, dominates that little corner, you know. And this Cocoon is in a slightly different corner, but very similar one, and it dominates what it's doing in that little corner. So it's kind of a niche game, but it executes on that niche perfectly. So, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of something negative to say, because I like to at least... no game is perfect, right? But there weren't any bugs. The art style was perfect. Well, there weren't any unintended bugs. The art style was perfect. The puzzling, I guess, if I'm really stretching, I think maybe it could have been a little bit more clear about how traversing between the worlds worked outside of the standard mechanic, where when I find out you can walk, it wasn't until the last 5 minutes of the game that I realized, oh, you can walk across that bridge, and that walking across that bridge is changing worlds. If they could have found a clear way to communicate that, and maybe it's just that I just wasn't paying enough attention or I missed it, but it wasn't clear to me. So if they could have made that a little bit more clear, it could have felt a little bit more intuitive, especially right there in the last few minutes of the game. But I mean, like, I am scraping the bottom of the barrel to try and find something negative to say about this game. So, I mean, if that's the worst thing I can think of, like, this game, if you are a puzzle game fan, this is a must-play. If you like games like Portal, Superliminal, what's that game? The Witness. I've never played that, but I've heard a lot of people say it's really good. If you like those kinds of just like, we're just going to give you some really hard puzzles now, or even Inside and Limbo are kind of like that, but don't go into this expecting that. Because it does have a different feel. It's feels more like Portal or some Superliminal, where it's just like, this is what was that one? Antechamber. Antechamber is a really good example of a game that has a very interesting premise, but the execution's all over the place, right? There are some wow moments in that game, and there are some moments where it's like, how in the fuck would I have ever been able to figure that out? The game doesn't explain certain things in that game. And it's very, very difficult to do without a guide. I would say that it's close to impossible. But you don't need a guide for this game. You just need to get your juicy brain out and start thinking. That's really the best way to beat this game. So very, very well done. Very excellent game. I'm definitely going to recommend this to any fans of puzzle games. Really, really good. Enjoyed it immensely. Okay. So we are done with Cocoon. So last order of business. Cocoon, it's been a distinct pleasure. But we are now going to uninstall you from our Xbox and never play you again. Bye-bye, Cocoon! Really, really did have a great time with it.